Any news on BRIAR? Is her state good? So here's the thing with BRIAR. BRIAR's just really, really, really high win rate. Like in silver. So in all ranks, here's the highest win rate champions in League of Legends. Like, so this isn't silver, this is all ranks. So just average across all ranks, here's the highest win rate in champions in League of Legends. It's like Neela, Warwick, Set, you know, BRIAR. BRIAR is up there with Warwick, right? And that makes it difficult to buff her because, you know, her win rate's very, very high, right? Now, of course, she's not going to feel as strong in, you know, like challenger play, as an example. And so there's always this question of like, can we do work on BRIAR to skew her a bit more higher MMR? Maybe. But the thing about BRIAR is she tends to be fairly strong for the majority of the player base, at least in terms of win rate, and makes it more difficult to buff her. I have been thinking about like ways I can make BRIAR just more like, I don't know, usable, which is like not necessarily a straight buff. It probably would end up being, but like ways to make it more usable. One of the things I've been thinking a lot about is the suggestion that BRIAR's ultimate doesn't make the global sound until after the cast time, which means that if you were a good BRIAR player, you could do things like hide in a bush and ult someone who's close to you and not worry about them hearing it and running away. So there's potentially things we could do with BRIAR to just give her a bit more versatility and make her spells work for her a bit more. But overall, like, she's a very winning champion in League of Legends. The other interesting thing about BRIAR is one of the deepest played champions in League. She's like, I think like basically top 5. And for those of you who haven't heard this terminology before, deepest played means games per player. It basically means that like if you're a BRIAR main, do you play a lot of BRIAR games? And in terms of the entire roster of League of Legends, BRIAR is consistently top 5 on that metric, meaning that most of the BRIAR players you're seeing are playing a lot of BRIAR games. Other characters like this, to like give you all some comparisons, is Shaco is very deeply played, Katarina is very deeply played, Zyra is very deeply played. And so that's another thing about BRIAR, is that she's got a lot of people maining her who, you know, seem to be happy and seem to be having a good time. So it's not necessarily like a character you would look at and be like, is she like, are people upset? Is people sad about her? Like, you know, it doesn't mean she couldn't be improved, but yeah, she's like very strong in most MMRs, even though she falls off in high. And why is BRIAR so trash in high elo? So one of the things that I think about in terms of like what makes a good high elo character, aside from just like raw, you know, things like potential raw power or something like that, is the idea of optionality. Optionality is kind of just like, think about it this way. There is someone who wants to do something to me that's going to be rough. Maybe they ganked my lane. Maybe they're trying to jump on my character and kill them. Gonna be rough. Maybe you want to like jump on my character and kill them. Maybe you want to steal my CS or whatever or whatnot. Sorry, you can't do that in League. That's a Dota thing. But anyways, like when something as bad is about to happen to you in League of Legends, do you have a way to say, that's not going to happen anymore? And if you do, your character is probably just in the abstract a lot better in high MMR. EZREAL is a great example of this. It's like the enemy team wants to engage on you, nah, E away. The enemy team wants to run away from you, nah, E in and kill them, right? The enemy team wants to stop you from farming, nah, Q the wave. The enemy team wants to stop you from really doing anything you want to do, nah, you probably have an answer for it, right? Like EZREAL has a lot of optionality. And so it's not just that EZREAL is powerful and can do powerful things, but EZREAL can react to the things that his opponents are doing and potentially come out on top. And that tends to be really good in high MMR because, surprise, surprise, high MMR players are very good at the game. And if you give a good player a way to prevent other good players from succeeding, regardless of how good they are, that's powerful, right? That's useful, it's strong. And so like that's optionality or agency, something like that. And so one of the things about BRIAR is BRIAR just lays all her cards on the table. BRIAR says, this is what I'm doing. This is my game plan. This is what I'm going to do. And once I do it, I cannot stop. She's just like the most supreme, extreme version of a stat checker. And so basically in BRIAR, if you don't like have a perfect understanding of how every single fight in the game is going to go moments before it happens, you're probably going to end up dying a lot, especially against good players, because good players will see you coming at them and be like, okay, I know what BRIAR is trying to do. I will root her. I will dash away from her. I will do these things to avoid her. And so, while she can definitely be powerful, even in the hands of really good players, there's a challenger jungle player, or grandmaster, not challenger, I think he's like grandmaster or master, one of the two, Logan. And, he's really, really good at BRIAR. And like one of the reasons he's good at BRIAR is he knows how the fights are going to go before they happen. And so he's able to pick fights correctly. And then BRIAR legitimately does a number of things that are fairly powerful. Like, she's pretty good at a lot of 1v1. She's pretty good at like clearing your jungle, things like that. She's got a targeted stun, which is good in a number of situations. Like if you know the fight is going to go well and you jump in and targeted stun someone, doesn't matter how good that player is, they're targeted stunned, right? So like she has things that she can do that are powerful, but on the flip side of things, like you basically can't hit your ultimate against good players, and it's very hard to hit your E against good players, and a good player will just look at you running at them and be like, okay, she's running at me, and root you and things like that. And so the way I would describe BRIAR and higher MMRs is not that she's absolute garbage there. Like, I don't actually think that's as true compared to, some low MMR skewed characters. But more, you have to work 3 times as hard to get the same result, and it's still, like, really easy to outplay you. And so, whereas a character like EZREAL, if he does something dumb, he can be like, oops, I did something dumb, guess I won't, and then E out, right? BRIAR, if you do something dumb, you die. The punishment is death. And so BRIAR tests your ability to like predict the fight significantly harder than other characters for the same result. And the same result being like, you probably win the fight as a melee character or whatever. So yeah, makes it a lot harder for her to succeed at high MMRs. Doesn't mean that's a bad design or it's a bad character or anything like that. It's just like, some characters kind of like lay their cards on the table, and other characters like have a lot more optionality and reactionality. One thing I would like to do to BRIAR though is make her ultimate easier to hit. I think it's too hard to hit against good players, so maybe there's something there.
Do you know the reason or potential reasons for the way Wild Rift changed Lux? Her Q there doesn't bind minions, so you can freely shoot it through the wave, and her E automatically explodes on impact. No recast, so you can't shoot it through the wave, and the slow duration is shifted to after it explodes. To me, these changes feel like they just remove a significant portion of skill expression / counterplay from that's available to me when playing PC League. So I was not there for the actual doing of those changes, but those changes are things that were things in that vein, not necessarily those exact changes, but things like that were discussed when I was on Wild Rift. And the main reasons why the motivations for those changes were mainly behind Wild Rift's targeting and button systems. Basically, having a recast, like a low value recast that players mostly feel like they want to double tap the E, is something that we know players find really frustrating to use on Lux, where it's like we've done a lot of survey and investigation and like pulled a lot of data on this of like, we know in Wild Rift that spells like Lux E were not as fun to use as they are in PC, because once you press the E, you want to move your thumb to another button, right? Like if you go QER, especially on someone like Lux, you don't want to have to go QEER, right? You want to just go QER. That's a lot smoother and it feels better for most players. And similar things with Q, where we expect a lot of especially newer players to use the auto-targeting on Q. And if it can hit minions, that auto-targeting often betrays you, right? So those were the main reasons why, at least when I was on Wild Rift, we were talking about doing some revisions like that to champions like Lux around, hey, these things don't play necessarily super nicely with the Wild Rift control scheme, especially for newer players. And Lux is a really good example of a champion. It's like, she's very new player friendly, and she's very appealing to new players. And so having a champion with some control scheme aspects that aren't super friendly to new players, that new players want to play and probably should play, isn't what we consider to be the best setup, right? And so that's kind of, I expect why they made those changes. I can't say for sure because I don't work on Wild Rift and I don't really talk to almost anyone that works on it these days. I guess I talked to a few people that still work on it, but for the most part, I'm not super up to date on their design philosophy and like the motivation on design side for doing a lot of their changes. So I can't speak to that perfectly, but what I'll say is that that's my expectation for why they did it.